Get out of
I
here.
got the final
Pretty good time.
Douglas County certification of election.
Good.
Of election.
Good.
Okay.
So you have all three now.
I do.
Great.
Where's Bobby? Where is she?
Second row.
There she is.
Vintage clothes. With clothes are older than we are.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the December 4th meeting of the Littleton City Council. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Brinkman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez,
Present.
Councilmember Cole,
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll, Councilmember Elrod, Councilmember Fay,
Here.
and Councilmember Schlachter.
Here.
Okay, this evening we have Troop 114 here with us, and they have agreed to lead us in the pledge. Do you guys want to come on up? Everybody stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Guys.
Thank you very much. Okay, so before we get started with our meeting, we have one announcement that I want to make. This is, the city of Littleton has been challenged. We've been challenged by the city of Greenwood Village and to compete with Lone Tree and Centennial on collecting socks for the homeless. So we're going to kick it off tonight. Yeah, and you can set that so it's, this is the Sock It Out campaign is something that's done nationally, and a lot of times cities will challenge each other to do it. And so we have been challenged, and we are going to take this very, very seriously. So we will have these wrapped containers at the library, the museum, and then here at City Hall. So we encourage everybody to pick up a pair of new socks for any age, man, woman, child, and just drop them in the box as many as you can, as often as you can, because we really do need to win. We really got to beat these guys. So to kick it off, council has, we will inaugurate the box with socks. And I'm going to publicly embarrass Councilmember Driscoll, who forgot his. You can borrow some of mine.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Valdez. Uh-huh. So, all right, council, ready?
Ready.
Gotta hit it.
Oh, they're all my socks. I found my bag.
Hold back on you, Pat.
Good job, Pick.
There we go.
Man, make us look better.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, you got
There's way to show us up that.
Okay, thank you. We also have this evening a opportunity to recognize outstanding citizen of Littleton, and so I want to kind of explain a bit about Bobby Sheffield. Bobby Sheffield is a member of the Littleton community and has been for many years, and she has also served on the South Metro Land Conservancy, and she has announced that she is going to retire from her service on the Conservancy, and so we wanted to recognize her service this evening. We are very pleased to recognize Bobby as a guest citizen for her tireless work on behalf of the Parks and Rec and Open Space in Littleton. Bobby is a founding member of the South Metro Land Conservancy and has served on its board of directors since its inception in 1993. Concerned with the loss of open space in the South Metro area, Bobby and others obtained a 501c3 status. They wrote laws, bylaws, they elected officers, and they wrote a mission statement for the organization. And this was to acquire or preserve open space lands and to enhance the quality of life for present and future generations. The South Metro Land Conservancy's accomplishments are just too numerous to mention, but a few of them include the acquiring of land to buffer the South Platte Park, advocating for the railroad spur trail north of Mineral Avenue, and working on the 2.8-acre Oxbow property purchase. Also, the 5.5-acre Lee Gulch open space purchase and the master plan. Serving on the Littleton Open Space Task Force and making a significant contribution to the environmental pool to set aside additional water in Chatfield Reservoir to provide water quality benefits for the South Platte River downstream from the dam. After 25 years of passionate service on the South Metro Land Conservancy, Bobby is stepping aside. She and her husband, Wayne, have lived in Littleton for 39 years and just celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary. With her, with 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and a great-granddaughter, Bobby says for them to have a place to imagine, play, or just relax and dream is so important to her. She said, "When my world is crazy, I go to an open space to set it right again. I find peace, comfort, and serenity there, seeing what God has provided." The Littleton City Council extends its sincere appreciation to Bobby for her dedication, acquiring, preserving, and enhancing the beautiful open space in Littleton. There's no doubt that the impact of her advocacy will be felt by generations to come. On behalf of the citizens of Littleton and the Littleton City Council, thank you, Bobby, for making Littleton a better place.
I just met her.
In order to share what he loves so much back with you, one of our favorite photographers, Maureen Ravenette, who is queen photographer of that area and does beautiful work. We have chosen a photograph of hers, and we would love to present it to you.
Maybe she has to pose for a picture. She can say, is Bobby gonna say anything? Thank you, guys.
Were we in this?
I'd just like to say thank you and just let you know that it's been my honor and privilege to do this. It's a passion of mine, and I will continue to do it. It's interesting for our anniversary we got of something that kind of epitomizes where I am, and it says, it's by Walt Disney, and it says to the effect, I think there's a lot more story to be told. So who knows what's next. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay, our next item is approval of the agenda. Council, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. So our next agenda item is public comment. If you wish to address the City Council under public comment, please have signed in on the speaker form. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and the City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. We may refer the matter to staff to obtain additional information and report back to council as appropriate. We do have this evening, we do have one second reading public hearing, and that is on an ordinance regarding development fees. and impact fees. So if you are here to speak on that, please wait until the public hearing for that so that your comments will be on the record. Okay, so we have 26 people signed up to speak. Let me see, might be more. 27. So I would ask that everybody, I will call your name and then I will call the person behind you so that you can be ready to come down so that we can move efficiently through this. 26 or 27 times 3 is a long time. We want to be able to get through everybody. We have a 4-page agenda ahead of us. So if someone has said something that you agree with and don't want to repeat what they said, it's fine to just note that you agree with that comment, and your notation will make that notation for the record for you. And I hope I can pronounce everybody's name correctly. Angela Engel is up first, and Mike Orff is second.
Good evening, council members. My name is Angela Engel, and I'm here again to speak to you tonight regarding the short-term rental ordinance. We had a group of owners that met recently at my home to talk about the ordinance and go through line by line. And I understand that you've heard from a lot of community members that might be disgruntled. We wanted to make sure that tonight we provided our perspective. We've also emailed some recommendations in terms of changes to the proposed ordinance, and we'd like to ask for your consideration in terms of accepting those suggestions. Our group, we're obviously varied in terms of how we operate our short-term rentals, but our 2 primary complaints centered around the owner occupancy requirement, and then also the second one that would require neighbors to be notified and have public comment. And just in terms of how other businesses operate, other businesses aren't required to consult with their businesses in terms of when they do business, and residents don't have to get the permission of neighbors when they buy a house. So we feel like that's it's a punitive standard. Also, we understand that the reason this has come before council has to do with a particular Airbnb that was rather negligent and had multiple code violations. It's our understanding that that is no longer operating. But one of the things that stood out about our group last night is that amongst all of us, 12 owners that were gathered, there hasn't been a single code violation in all of the combined years of our operations. So to create policy that is specifically targeted around one person often creates unintended consequences. And Denver in particular is dealing with that because they were overly prescriptive and overly punitive in terms of their approach to short-term rentals, and now have not been able to manage all of the prescriptive rules that they've required. So we, in looking at the problem, we're very committed to Littleton. We love Littleton. We're invested in maintaining our great city. And so it was real easy for us to come to consensus for an alternative that would directly address the problem. And that is, if there is a particularly licensed short-term rental that has more than 3 code violations that are documented within a 12-month period, then that comes under review with the potential for that license to be revoked. That addresses the problem. It's not overly prescriptive. We bring a lot of benefit into the community. You're going to hear from all the owners tonight. They're great people. They're responsible. A lot of us didn't realize that you had to be licensed. I did. I just wrote a check for $400. The people that rent from me are primarily families, and they spend money in the community and our local businesses. So we ask that you'll decide fairly and take our considerations. Thank you.
Mike, and the next is Elisa.
Hello, Council. My name is Michael Orff, and I've lived in the Southbridge neighborhood of Littleton for the past 16 years. About 3 years ago, I actually left the corporate world behind and became self-employed and a small business owner. I did my research ahead of time and found that Littleton is very supportive of small businesses and small business owners, and I was very happy with that and decided to pursue my businesses. One of my ventures involved a small-term rental home that I own near downtown Littleton. The rental's licensed. I pay business taxes to the state and to the city. I realize there's very little regulation right now and fully support the process that you guys are undertaking to introduce regulations and licensing. I was hoping the regulation would protect the citizens of the city while at the same time supporting small business owners. However, after reading the ordinance as it's written now, I was a bit dismayed that the council is considering going from virtually no regulation to kind of what's considered an outright ban on short-term rentals. In particular, I'm referring to the owner occupancy requirement. This will limit the rentals to just those people that are renting out a room in their home. Most of the guests that stay in my rental are families that are coming in for family events, graduations, weddings, things like that. And a single room would not obviously accommodate them. These families shop in our stores, eat in our restaurants. They support other small businesses in the city. In fact, I include in my home a binder which highlights many of these small businesses in downtown Littleton. My short-term rental represents a significant portion of the income I use to support my family. The folks that clean my rental, they're a husband and wife team, and I know that the income that they make from my rental also is a major portion of their income. If the ordinance stands as it's written, it would force me to sell my rental and scramble to find another source of income to replace it, and it would also be a hardship for my cleaners. As Angela mentioned, a small group of short-term rental owners got together and we composed a letter that addresses our concerns. And I definitely empathize with the group of neighbors that had an issue in their neighborhood. And I wouldn't want that in my neighborhood either. But one of the things that I would realize is that you could have those same issues with a bad owner or a long-term renter, and there's things in place to deal with that right now. I know the council is concerned about homes being bought up by out-of-state investors and there being too many vacation renters in the city, and I think the laws of supply and demand will limit that. I sincerely hope the council continues its support of small businesses in the city and considers revisions to the ordinance to ensure that continues. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Lisa Trippigan is up, and then behind her is Lisa Knotts. Lisa Knotts.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Trippigan, and I am a licensed short-term rental owner and business owner in Littleton. My husband and I were relocated here right after we got married, and our relocation came with a 6% raise for him and a triple housing cost for the cost of housing compared to where we were previously. So because of that, we purchased a property and we started renting out a room on Airbnb to be able to supplement our additional housing costs of living in this community. That was about 5 years ago. Since then, we've started having children, and as our children have grown, we have kind of outgrown the space of the house. And in order to save up money to buy a newer house or a bigger house in the area, we'd like to stay in Littleton. We needed to continue to be able to save more money to do so. So we are actually renting a house right across the street from where we live, or where we were living, and we are now renting our entire home on Airbnb in order to save up some money to purchase a different home for our growing family. Obviously, the primary residence only requirement would be a huge detriment to our current situation. We have put a lot of money into this house in order to get it ready to be a short-term rental, and to lose that investment in our business, in our small business, would be very financially devastating to our family. I mean, to me, it's like, can you imagine if you had started a restaurant and put all this money in and you have a license to operate and everything, and then all of a sudden city council says we're going to shut down all restaurants because we had one bad restaurant that people were complaining about. I see our business as no different. We provide a service to families in the neighborhood. Most of our guests are families coming to visit family and friends in Littleton. We get very few to any who are coming to Denver. It's mainly people who are coming to visit in Littleton. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, so we know how complicated it is to travel to hotels with small children. So we provide height shares, pack and plays, and we really cater to those families who are looking for a way to travel with their young children, and a hotel won't work for these types of guests. So our guests are not the type of people that if you shut down us, they're not just going to go find a hotel on County Line. They're going to find another short-term rental that works for their traveling needs and meets the needs of their families. And they're not going to be spending money in Littleton. They're going to be taking it to other communities that allow them. So I definitely am in favor of regulation in order to shut down the bad players. Thank you for your time.
Lisa, and then David Tippergen is next.
Hello, my name is Lisa Knotts. I'm an over 30-year resident of Littleton and a 30-year employee of Littleton Adventist Hospital. Currently, I'm the manager of rehabilitation at the hospital. I'm committed to Littleton and I'm committed to service. I'm grateful that I am a leader in an organization that has such an amazing partnership with the city of Littleton. We've always found the city council to be open-minded and fair. I own my property here in Littleton and have been successful as a short-term rental host for over 2 years. I decided to pursue this short-term rental hosting when a pipe burst and significant flooded damage occurred. This small business of short-term renting allowed me to recoup all of my losses and to upgrade my property and to improve, and all the home improvements occurred in Littleton businesses. Simply put, I'm a small business owner supporting a small business in Littleton. Currently, I live next to a long-term fourplex rental that has been a party house. For many years, I do understand. I understand the city's council's concerns regarding the recent complaint. I agree that some licensing and broad oversight is beneficial and should be implemented. I hope that's based on what's absolutely necessary. I've never had a neighborhood complaint about my short-term rental, nor have I ever had a complaint about the city of Littleton from my short-term renters. My experience with hosting has been inspiring and value-added. My quality guests have been positive, knowledgeable, engaging, and fun. My short-term rental is walking distance to Littleton, and my guests eat, drink, and shop in Littleton. In fact, local restaurants have eagerly handed me their menus when they know I have a short-term rental. What a positive financial impact. Our guests include people coming to see Littleton family, healthcare providers with short-term travel contracts or professional educations, couples looking to relocate to Littleton, wedding attendees, and patients coming to see destination physicians. I have a great pride and love for my community and am in no way want to see it become a temporary community, but rather temporary visitors spending time with long-term community. I'm here as part of the Short-Term Rental Alliance, and I support the letter that we're presenting. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you will consider our concerns and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. David Tippergen. And then next up is Vicki Greenberg.
How are y'all doing tonight? So I'm David Tippergen. I've owned a short-term rental for 3 years, going on 4 years. It used to be our basement only, and then it switched to our entire residence. So I'm licensed throughout the entire process. We've been paying taxes, and with that also, we're very active in our community. We love Littleton. We host block parties all of the time. A lot of our neighbors that we know through the block parties. And because of that, we have a real commitment to the neighborhood, and the last thing we want to see is our rental kind of bring down the neighborhood. One thing we've noticed with our rental is it brings families, a lot of families. It'll bring groups and they'll be playing in our front yards. We have neighbors that comment on how much they enjoy seeing people play in our front yard, seeing kids play in the leaves, having children play in the leaves with my kids. I really, really enjoy what short-term rentals bring to Littleton. On top of everything else that everyone mentions about the income that it brings to cleaners, to maintenance crews, to landscapers, we've had 3 people that have started businesses off of our short-term rental: landscaping, contracting, and cleaners. We've switched cleaners because one of our cleaners that started their business got so busy she had to drop us. So, with all of that, try not to yell. My primary concern is the requirement to live in a short-term rental for 8 months. It would effectively ban our rental. We're not a problem rental. It would force us to move back into our house or turn our house into a long-term rental. And that would bring down the value of the neighborhood compared to where it is now. That it used to be, I guess, in a more distressed, I guess it was more distressed than it is now when I was running it, because I didn't get around to the maintenance quite as fast. I didn't paint, I didn't mow the lawns, and I didn't keep up with the hedges. So if I, as an owner, treated my property that way, I can't imagine what a long-term rental would do. I completely support the email that was sent out with the Short-Term Rental Alliance. I think that we can actually move forward and have something that works with short-term rental owners and the community. I really want to see the community grow. Some of our guests have even turned into neighbors. It's been really positive. And to see that go, to see that just pass away because of regulations that are way too restrictive, I think is a direct detriment to the community. The community has changed. Now it's mostly families. When we first moved here 5 years ago, it was not the same demographic. Now children are playing in the streets, and with that comes families who need to visit them. And it would be a shame to see all these families forced outside of Littleton. So thank you for your consideration, and I'll try not to yell at y'all next time.
Thank you, David. Vicki? And the next up is Nancy Barvich.
Hi there, my name is Vicki Greenberg, and I am the owner of a ranch home with a basement unit that I rent out on Airbnb. I'm also a small business owner that's been fortunate enough to...
Can you bend it over?
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm fortunate enough to be a small business owner. Commercial Fitness Solutions is the name of my company, and we've earned substantial business from both South Suburban and businesses within the town of Littleton, which we're grateful for. I live about 2 blocks away from my property, and I too have an objection to the owner-occupied portion of the laws that you wanted to instate. Currently, my niece is living in the upstairs unit, and by renting it on Airbnb, I'm able to really reduce the amount of rent I can charge for her so she can go to grad school at DU. The people that have come and stayed at my rental have been just amazing. They're everything from a divorced dad who has the ability to bring his kids to the rental, let them play in the backyard, as opposed to a hotel, to people coming in for infertility treatments, to people looking for places to relocate, weddings, and all the stuff that other people have said. So I just hope people will consider more open-minded options and maybe what's on those, the list of rules, and I'm really grateful that you're willing to listen to us speak.
Thank you. Nancy? And then next up is Barbara Aline.
Hi, my name is Nancy Baruch. My husband and I lived in Golden, Colorado for 28 years, where we raised our 4 children before moving to Littleton 3 years ago. I run my own wellness business, and I am a short-term rental owner. We offer 2 units, a guest house and a basement apartment, on our property. Having a short-term rental business provides us with the funds for maintenance and upkeep of the property, and also another source of income for myself as I have a health challenge, and that this is something that I can do. My experience as a host has been a pleasant surprise. We have met wonderful people from all over the world, and some have become regulars. Their length of stay is anywhere from 3 days to 3 months. The reasons for their visits vary. Traveling nurses, work, vacation, family gatherings, and a lot of weddings. Several of our guests have needed a place to stay while they look for a home in the area. And in this situation in particular, I consider myself an ambassador for Littleton, offering guidance and direction. Each of these guests have contributed to Littleton's economy during their stay. They are buying goods at local shops, going to restaurants, attending activities, and plus the occupancy tax, I believe, goes to Littleton. I operate my business in a responsible manner. I am careful in my process of accepting guests. I want to make sure that they understand the importance of respecting our property and our relationship with our neighbors. I have never once had a problem with any of our guests. I am asking each of you in the City Council to adopt our recommendations included in the letter that was provided to you a little bit earlier today. I am also asking council members to allow each licensed owner to host more than one unit on a given property. As I mentioned before, I have 2 units on our property. We, as short-term rental owners, are everyday people who care about the properties, our neighborhoods, and our greater community. We are willing to support a fair and enforceable ordinance. Thank you for your consideration of this matter, and I want to personally thank the council for their due diligence in thoroughly vetting a proposed ordinance that considers responsible short-term rental owners and many of the benefits that we bring to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara? And then behind Barbara is Matt Mullen.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to welcome the new city council member. And I guess Karina's not here, but my name is Bodie Allen, AKA Barbara, only to the bank and the government. I have lived in Littleton since 1963. My family was part of the Maryland influx of Martin Marietta workers. And so I was in the graduating class of Littleton, 1965, and I'm a graduate of the University of Denver. Needless to say, I've seen some kind of changes here in our little town. When we first moved here, downtown Littleton was a very slow business area with a couple of bars with racetrack kind of names like the Winner's Circle, as Centennial Racetrack was located nearby. On one festive occasion, we actually saw a horse come out of a downtown bar. And I guess back then, Littleton might literally have been called a one-horse town. Anyway, I've spent many years dreaming that downtown Littleton would become a bustling, hip place where people would love to spend time and to visit. So I'm willing to partially accept responsibility for that having happened. I've been a short-term rental host with Lisa Knotts for over 2 years. I do all of the communication and bookings with our guests. I screen everyone who requests to stay with us, and I feel I have come to learn a lot about the natures of those people and why they choose to come visit our sweet little town. We have had a mixture of guests of all ages from many places in our country and abroad. It's been a wonderful mix of interesting people, and we've enjoyed sharing Littleton with them. We've never had a problem with anyone. They've all been respectful, quiet visitors. Every single one has complimented us on what a lovely town Littleton is and how they enjoyed being able to walk to the many shops, restaurants, and bars that we have to offer. In my estimation, what great ambassadors we short-term rental hosts are for tourism and a real Colorado experience. We have never had any neighbor complaints about our short-term rental, and I too understand City Council's concerns regarding a few neighbor complaints about a couple of short-term rentals. I agree that some licensing should be implemented, and I hope that's based on what's needed and wanted rather than creating further complications. I'm here as part of the Short-Term Rental Alliance, and I support the letter that we are presenting with our proposed recommendations. Appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you. Matt, and then next up is Jim Mascolo.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Matt Mullen, and quite simply, after being a long-term renter in Littleton, I was finally able to buy a house recently. in large part because of the detached carriage house, which provides income to supplement the mortgage. My 3-year-old, my 5-year-old, they're able to go to the schools that they want to now. And I want to echo a lot of the previous comments. Most of the renters that we've seen so far, they come into our community to do things like spend money with the local businesses, see if it's an area that they want to move to and raise their families, like I did many years ago. When they're here, they do much more support than detriment to our community. And I feel like everyone knows that. I'm part of the Littleton Short-Term Renters Alliance, and we are obviously for fair and responsible regulation. I thank you for your time, and if it's not a bribe, I will make sure that every renter going forward drops a pair of socks in that box. If it is a bribe, strike that from me.
Thank you. Let me have that one on tape. Jim, and then next up is Les Beecher.
Good evening. In last Tuesday's study session, the council began the process of fixing parts of its zoning regulations, and I feel council should be congratulated both for acknowledging this problem and for efforts to fix it. In the 6 months since we began protesting the damage caused by this out-of-date code, my neighbors and I have often been portrayed as unreasonable and unable to understand the city's zoning. I think we understand well enough both the problem and the city's reluctance to deal with it. And as the study session validated, the code is unreasonable, not the citizens who are affected by it. We continue to believe there are many things the city can and should do now to mitigate the damage caused by this code while there's time. Responsible governance calls for more than amending bad regulations. It also demands addressing the damages those rules cause. But in this, the city continues to avoid its citizens and to operate without transparency. Under the banner of avoiding litigation at all costs, it seems to have made protecting its bureaucratic prerogatives the priority. Our legitimate safety concerns are dismissively identified as the alleged desire of a group of citizens. This kind of talk is counterproductive. It avoids rather than faces the issues that need to be faced. There's nothing alleged about our fears for our safety. There's nothing alleged about crimes that have been happening in South Park. There's nothing alleged about the KDVR Lakewood story that's been airing today. The council's legitimate authority is to protect its citizens, including its children and their schools. The problems caused by this usage won't go away because of legal rebuttals. There's real issues that need to be thoughtfully addressed. We have repeatedly asked for a meeting with city staff to discuss our concerns. Good governance and thoughtful leadership should welcome the input and cooperation of engaged citizens. We don't need to remind anyone, we didn't create the problem. We're trying to mitigate it. Our concerns are not new to the council. They are in the areas of safety, noise, parking, and the dysfunction between the city and South Park. Right now, the city is involved in a re-envisioning process. Our city's vision should not be dictated by factions that find nothing problematic about a shooting range a few feet from children in their classrooms and citizens in their homes. Working now in an open and constructive manner with citizens could be a first step by council to signal that it has a new and better vision for the city. The proposed zoning code changes are welcome, appropriate, and necessary. However, it is important now that the city partner with those impacted stakeholders. Thank you.
Les, and then next up is Rebecca Askew.
I'm Les Beecher. I'm here to address my and my neighbors' concerns about our safety in the South Park neighborhood now that Triple J Armory has moved in directly across the street from us. My understanding is that granting a permit to a business like Triple J is no longer possible, that the city's perception is that a shooting range in a neighborhood such as South Park is deemed incompatible with certain businesses and neighborhoods. We appreciate that decision and thank the city for its foresight. The decision, however, is not retroactive, and we are stuck with the city's original decision that allows construction of the shooting range to go ahead. And so the questions of our safety, along with the noise and parking problems, among others, are still a concern to us. For example, burglaries of gun stores are on the rise. Triple J has had violent break-ins in the last few years when thieves drove stolen cars through Triple J's plate glass windows to steal guns inside. They have a valuable commodity thieves want, and we're concerned that they will try new and innovative ways to get inside. Their location in our neighborhood is isolated in the late evening and early morning hours. We're concerned for people returning to our community in the late hours of the night. You may have heard about the Lakewood gun shop this morning at 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. when a cement truck was, with an attached cable to a door, as I understand it, pulled the door off and were able to get inside. And so we wonder, will the city require that Triple J lock up the guns each night in order to help deter gun theft? We need to see an increased and visible police presence. We seldom see police patrolling the area. We need the city to help us establish a neighborhood watch that is closely coordinated with the Littleton Police. We would like a police representative to meet with us about our concerns. We would like a person in a liaison role to be identified who would be our contact person if and when safety concerns come up. These are special circumstances that require a special response from the city, a response not yet evidenced. The city has played a large role in causing this problem. Now it needs to responsibly deal with it. And so we ask this council, particularly our direct representatives, to intervene for us with the city on these issues of safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Rebecca, and then next up is Christoph Demont Heinrich.
Good evening, everyone. I want to address a couple of issues: ventilation and handling of contaminants at the Triple J Armory property at 8152 South Park Lane. We understand that there will be 3 new mechanical devices on the roof and that they will be screened in some manner, possibly by what's called a roof curb. Does the screening system, the roof curb, referenced in the September 18th letter from Community Development, constitute an exterior architectural change? Section 10.4-1 of the Littleton City Code is referenced in this letter, and it states various requirements for all architectural features, including roof lines. Why wouldn't this new equipment and the roof curb be considered a physical change to the exterior of the building, resulting in the need for further scrutiny under the architectural change requirements? And finally, will the noise from the rooftop equipment be included in future sound tests? As it relates to the contaminants that the shooting range will be giving off, will the City of Littleton or Tri-County Health monitor the shooting range, particularly for lead toxicity from the bullets? How will the public get results of these tests? We would request that the city provide transparency in the disclosure of contamination, and that we would like the City Council to provide answers to our questions regarding the rooftop mechanical devices and compliance with city ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Christoph, and then after Christoph is Marnie, and that's Yankachek.
Okay, my name is Christoph Demont Heinrich, and I'm one of 10 people here who have concerns regarding the proposed Triple J shooting range in South Park. Based on the city's recent decisions regarding future zoning and shooting ranges in the city, which I'm glad to hear about, it is clear to me that the city understands noise from shooting ranges is a huge quality of life as well as a property value issue. Looking through the 400 pages of building permit reports regarding the proposed Triple J shooting range, we have multiple concerns. Concern number one, the city approved a test based on only 2 guns firing. There will eventually be 20 shooting lanes. How can a test of just 10% of the total number of guns that could be being fired simultaneously be adequate or accurate? Concern number 2, the results of the single initial sound test in terms of compliance with the ordinance were ambiguous. And ambient sound was measured as 45 decibels, and the shooting test registered as high as 60 to 61 decibels at certain edges of the property. 60 decibels is our understanding, the maximum acceptable level that is allowed for only 6 minutes per hour. We have asked for an explanation and clarification of these results. Also, how is the 6 minutes per hour maximum noise level going to be enforced, and by whom? Will we be forced to have to call the police and city constantly, thereby almost surely instigating and ratcheting up angry relations with Triple J? Will the city leave us hanging when dangerous confrontation could be the outcome? Concern number 3, the city has not considered the 3 mechanical ventilation and evaporative units that are to be placed on the roof of the Triple J building and its sound calculations. Why not? Concern number 4, we are hearing contradictory stories on whether or not another sound test will be conducted by an independent sound engineering firm at the completion of the Triple J building work. We need to know if a city test of Triple J's noise production will or will not be conducted. Having no second city noise test is outrageous and unacceptable. How can the city be sure that Triple J is truly complying with noise regulations and laws if it does not check by way of its own professionals that Triple J is indeed in compliance? Allowing Triple J to move forward with no end-of-build tests is like assuming motorists in downtown Littleton are all driving the speed limit because some random private police for hire, who may not have even tested or measured speeds, says they aren't speeding. I think that you would agree that that is ridiculous and unacceptable. We would like to know how, by whom, and in what specific ways our very legitimate and important noise concerns regarding the proposed Triple J shooting range in South Park are going to be addressed by the City of Littleton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marnie? And then behind Marnie is James Donnelly.
Good evening. Thank you, council members.
Marnie, please give me your last name.
Marnie Janacek.
Janacek, thank you.
Thank you for attempting to say it.
I know. You wrote it very neatly, too, so.
No worries. I really appreciate your time and dedication to our community. I am here this evening as a concerned citizen and resident of the South Park neighborhood. As a parent and educator in this community, I wanted to take just a moment to share with you about this increased concern around safety in our neighborhood over these last 6 months. With these safety concerns, I lost a page. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, my counterparts have also shared some of those, but around the safety concerns, we really are just asking for that connection with the police department, some partnership, sit down with a representative to be able to help us to address any of the safety concerns that have started to arise in our community. And it might be as simple as additional patrols, about also establishing a neighborhood watch. But we feel that it is reasonable to ask our city to support the safety and well-being of our residents. And Littleton has always been a wonderful place to raise a family. I noticed that here we are now one of the top 100 places to live in the U.S., and we were stated as the 15th safest city in Colorado. And so we just want to continue to address any concerns that arise and maintain the quality of life for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. James? And then behind James is Chris McGuire.
My name is James Donnelly. I've lived in Littleton in the same house on South Spotswood Street in District 4 since 1978, and I've owned the Evergreen Motel on South Santa Fe Drive in District 1 since 1980. That's nearly 40 years. Ordinance number 54-2018, scheduled for first reading tonight, revises existing definitions and establishes several brand new definitions for various occupancies, which are not now defined in the code. It appears that the ordinance has been created to address various concerns regarding short-term rentals rising from the sudden popularity of services such as Airbnb and other online services. Unfortunately, this attempt to codify requirements for this relatively new concept has spilled over into adding burdensome new requirements for long-established concepts such as hotels and motels. My primary concern, as owner of the Evergreen Motel, rests in the new definitions for hotels and motels. In particular, the prohibitions against permanent residency and stays longer than 30 days for more than 10% of the guests would adversely affect our business to a great degree. The requirement for daily linen service is incompatible with our offers of weekly and monthly rates. The requirement for telephone service appears obsolete with today's nearly universal use of mobile phones. The new definitions also would prohibit us from reconfiguring the motel to be a rooming facility or boarding house, as we have no communal cooking facilities, but all the rooms have their own restrooms and showers. So, our long-standing business does not fit any of the new definitions. Curiously, the city's own sales tax form includes a line item deduction for lodging plus 30 days. Our customers who choose to stay long-term all have good reasons for doing so, such as convenience, lack of a car while working nearby, or even just a desire to live simply with few responsibilities. There is nothing wrong with this. Nobody is adversely affected, and these people have a clean, warm, and affordable place to live. The Evergreen Motel has offered this opportunity since it was built nearly 70 years ago. I believe this ordinance needs much more thought and attention to detail, as I do not believe it to be your intent to drive any of us out of business. Please do not allow this ordinance to be approved as written. It still needs a lot more work. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris McGuire, and then behind Chris is Maureen Hartob.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, honorable members of council. Chris McGuire, 10-year resident of Littleton and Highline Crossing. I wanted to start with an acknowledgement and a statement of gratitude for staff and council for crafting appropriate and reasonable modifications to the city's zoning code that would prevent a placement of a business such as a shooting range in an inappropriate location. It's a commendable work. Originally, I was going to speak tonight on the issue of parking and the impact of parking in the Triple J Armory on South Park and Highline Crossing. I'll just briefly summarize by saying that they have a rated occupancy capacity of 158 people and 33 parking spaces. There will inevitably be situations where they have more patrons with no place to park, and that's going to create its own unique challenges. When I walked in tonight, I wasn't aware of what had happened in Lakewood earlier today, and it triggered an epiphany. Having a gun shop, and it's like an arms race. There is nothing in building codes, nothing in statute, nothing in regulation that's going to change the unalterable fact that we now have in our neighborhood essentially a time bomb, and it's only a question of time before something happens and there's not going to be anything that can be done about it. So I would simply ask that council and staff consider first principles, consider what's right, and consider a broader vision of what's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen, and then next would be Liz Bird.
Good evening. I'm Maureen Hartlaub. I live in Highline Crossing. We moved here 12 years ago. My son was 3 years old, partly because of the safety of the neighborhood. I had grown up in central Denver. I liked Littleton. It feels different now. My son's 15. He's also, I can't keep him inside the house like my little 3-year-old. He's a 15-year-old. He's learning to drive. Sometimes he walks to the garlic nut or he walks somewhere around. So I'm more concerned with the safety. Thank you for being proactive about zoning. I worked with the state of Colorado for 16 years. I have gotten public input, worked with stakeholders, and I know it can be a pain in the ass. I mean, I really do know that. Trying to balance what everybody wants with what you can actually do with the rules and within the statute. I would like you to work proactively with our community for the safety issues. There might not be anything more you can do with the zoning in our neighborhood right now, but there's other things you can do to help us feel safe. And thank you for working for zoning and proactively with Littleton so this doesn't happen in other neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz? And the next up is Carol Brezak.
Hello, my name is Liz Bird. My husband and I have a short-term rental unit on our property, and the short-term rental that we have has allowed my husband to stay home with our daughters, which has been a great boon to us, and it's allowed us to live in the neighborhood that we live in. I don't actually have a whole lot more to add to the conversation regarding short-term rental units. I think that most of what has been said is what needs to be said. But I do want to express my appreciation to the council for thinking very hard and working hard to make sure that you're creating an ordinance that is fair to everybody, and for putting a lot of time and effort into that. So short and sweet. Thanks.
Thank you. Carol, and then next up is Rob Mancy.
Change of subjects. I'm Carol Brezak. I live in the 4th District. Those of you that know me over the years know that process and procedure are very important to me, and certainly the law is very important to me. And I come before you tonight not really sure what I'm going to say to you, but I don't want to be controversial. I am really trying to be helpful, and I hope that you take my words in that tone tonight. When I saw the ballot question 3E on the ballot, I was stunned and decided I need to go back and look at procedure, because the law, when you look at election law, it's complicated. You've got to look at the charter, you've got to look at the Constitution, you have to look at Title I, you have to look at Title 31, and see how they integrate and go together. So the first stop is the charter, and it says that if you're going to amend the charter, we're going to use the state constitution, Title 22, or Article 22, or 20. And so you go to 20, and there's some publication requirements that are in 20 that if you're going to amend your charter, you have to do. Then you go to the election law, and then you've got to go to the municipal or home rule law. And what it boils down to is that the state statute gives citizens the right to challenge a ballot question, 111-203.5. It has to be done 5 days after the governing body approves ballot language. But in this instance, we have a governing body that did not approve ballot language. You approved an ordinance, but not the ballot language. And I went and looked at what Aurora did, and it's very systematic. They followed the law. So we have a ballot question that got on the ballot, but not in the legal way that's required by the law. And after spending hours researching and time with an attorney, I've decided that the best option is to see if I can't work with someone at the city so that when we have an election the next time, we get a ballot question that gets on the ballot the proper way, so that if a citizen wants to challenge the content of the ballot language, the law affords us 5 days to do it. But if you don't approve it, then I don't have the 5 days to approve in a pre-election contest. I have to wait till after an election. And we all know what happens if anybody wants to overturn an election. That's a difficult thing, and it's big deal stuff. And I don't want to do it. But what I would like to do is get some avenue to work with either council or with staff so that when we have an election the next time, it gets put on the ballot in a proper fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Mancy, and next is Richard Krantz.
Good evening, councilmen and women. My name is Rob Mancy. I own a franchise in the South Metro area called Avenue West, which is a corporate housing franchise. It's in the industry of managed corporate housing. We essentially manage investment properties for owners. So I'm interested in sharing with you that restrictive ordinance could be very, very restrictive to free enterprise and investment opportunities. Our company, I just want to read a press release back in June. We are pleased to announce we are pleased to recognize Avenue West Global Franchise as one of Colorado's 50 most innovative second stage companies, says Rick Ninneman, Colorado Companies to Watch Board Chairman. These companies contribute significantly to the growth and economic independence of the state by developing new services and products, creating jobs, enriching communities, and generating new industries. So that's our company. As far as the industry is concerned, this report here is the 2018 Corporate Housing Industry Report put out by the Corporate Housing Providers Association, and it states here that U.S. corporate housing revenue increased 12.9% to $3.62 billion nationwide in 2017. I want to draw an example here locally why the owner occupancy requirement may be too restrictive. If you consider a company like Lockheed Martin, who may have engineers that they want to ship somewhere out of the state or out of the country to a short-term period, maybe 2 years in a different area, that individual may want to keep his house. It's growing rapidly. The appreciation is happening rapidly. He wants to be able to come back to that house. He may want to come back at Christmas time to spend time with family. So he wants to have the opportunity to have a company like mine, manage that house and put high qualified corporate professionals in that house to maintain a rental income for that individual, for that owner. I'll give you a couple other examples. Littleton Adventist Hospital, there are hundreds of traveling nurses, docs, dentists that come on 3-4 month rotations in different hospitals and health clinics around the area. So restricting their ability to do that, it would not be good for not only Littleton Hospital that's hosting them, but also for the families that might have children in long-term, chronic illness situations where family wants to be close to their child in a 3 or 4 month long-term rental. Insurance claims are a viable opportunity for corporate rentals. Floods, fires cause displaced homeowners to need a place to stay for 4 or 5 months while their place is being restored. Business consultants, IT consultants, engineers are constantly relocating to our area for various short-term rentals. The relocation business is alive and well and growing. Many families, Colorado is a destination for a lot of families from across the country, from California, may want to live in a corporate rental for 3 or 4 months while they're looking for a new place to live. So that's an important aspect. I'll give another personal example. I've got one of my clients who is a single mom, lived in a house with a couple of kids. Oh, my time's up. So,
thank you.
All right, thank you for your consideration.
Richard, and then behind Richard is David. Is it Sherman?
Good evening. I'm Richard Krantz, and I'm the treasurer of Highline Crossing Co-Housing Community Association, and I would like to address a problem of coordination between the City of Littleton and South Park Owners Association, which came to light because of this Triple J permitting process. One of the central problems that came to light in this zoning process was the lack of coordination between SPOA, the South Park Owners Association, and the city's Community Development Department. The city continued to process Triple J's permit requests even while SPOA claimed that Triple J had not formally applied for approval from SPOA. It should be noted that SPOA did indicate via email to Triple J that it saw no problems with their relocation to South Park Lane. However, SPOA subsequently filed an injunction during the summer to stop the move, claiming that the email did not constitute approval. The court ruled against the injunction and in favor of Triple J. Nevertheless, the question of whether or not a formal approval process by SPOA is recognized by the City of Littleton or considered before the city issues a permit is not clear. Since SPOA has more restrictive regulations, it's important to us as homeowners in the area that their approval process be seriously considered by the city. Furthermore, back in June, Rob Hay of the Littleton Community Development Office told us that community development does not review permits coming from the planned development zone, such as South Park. So it appears that no one scrutinized Triple J's permit request for occupancy. Therefore, a comment made by the city attorney in his address to the council at the November 6th meeting seems particularly relevant to our understanding. The city attorney claimed, quote, the city received a letter from Triple J signed by South Park indicating this proposed use was an allowed use, unquote. SPOA has on a number of occasions told our board members that there was no such letter, but only an email exchange between Triple J and SPOA regarding SPOA's approval. It should also be noted that Triple J, through its attorneys in its counterclaim to the Arapahoe County District Court, also did not mention such a signed letter. We would ask the council, we know that the relationship between SPOA and the city, despite the city's protests to the contrary, is dysfunctional, that standards need to be set and formalized for dealing with issues including parking and permitting. The city has played a large role in causing this problem. Now it needs to take responsibility to deal with it. An important step in fixing this problem is to first understand what went wrong. We request a review of the process that led to circumventing the SPOA approval process. We would like the city to produce a signed letter, the signed letter from SPOA that the city attorney has referenced, not just an unsigned email. And we request that the city formalize a process with SPOA for handling all zoning permits in the future, and that this process be open and accessible to public scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you. David, and then William Powell. David, I think it's Sherman, may have left. Was going to speak on 6C. Okay. William Powell is next then, and then Melinda Harriman is after him.
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is William Powell. I've been a resident for more than 18 years now. And the reason I'm here is not because I'm a home rental property owner. I have a concern, a future concern, for the easement between the railroad tracks and the community up at Jackass Hill. I'm not clear about who's responsible for the property between the railroad tracks and the residents, and not sure who to talk to about that. And the reason I'm concerned, in 1965, we had a flood. And after that flood, we created a dam and a flood control project. This year, in California and also in Colorado, we've had a number of fires. The easement between the railroad tracks and the residents are not maintained by anyone. And the overgrowth is in fact overgrowing the area, and it's dried debris all along that track. So I'm trying to find out if the city council would look into the matter to find out who would be responsible, is it the residents or the railroad. But it is an easement, and if a fire happens there, no one can get to it. That's what I had to bring.
Thank you. And we do have your email address and your phone number, and staff will follow up with you. Thank you. Melinda Harriman, and then behind Melinda would be Josh Gervich.
Hi, my name is Melinda Harriman. I'm a resident of South Park, as well as a business owner in Littleton. And I'm just here today to reiterate my neighbors' concerns about particularly the safety issues with being a parent, and the concerns just that policing become more apparent and a patrol be assigned, because I'm very concerned about what this is going to bring to the neighborhood that's always been a very safe place. I walk my dog at night, and it's different since the Triple J presence has been there. I'm a little bit more nervous, and I just think it's always been it's just been a really safe, quiet neighborhood, and these are my concerns, noise and safety. So thank you.
Thank you. Josh, and then Pam Chadbourne. Bless you.
My name is Josh Gervich, and I just want to start by thanking you all for doing what you do. I certainly could never do it myself. I'm a local high school student special needs teacher with behavioral risk students, so just the same, I'm sure you probably couldn't imagine doing the job that I do. And every day I do go to school, sad to say this, with that concern in the back of my head that we hear about all over the country regarding violence in schools. And now, being a resident in Highline Crossing, I have to come home and sort of have that same fear. I can't let it go anymore. So I live in a house that's literally a stone's throw from this shooting range. I can step out my front door and hit it with a rock. I want to talk to you guys about the sound and the sound test that was conducted, that was done with 2 guns. And as my teenage students would say, if only there was only 2 guns to be used at that range. The test showed that the sound was at the edge or maybe even above the acceptable levels. The sound engineer said essentially that the sound levels would be okay once the building was finished. But there seems to be no real sound mitigation plan to make sure that this is true. So what is the plan? My back porch, I get to sit out and hear the echo of gunfire constantly. I'd like to know if there is some kind of mitigation plan. We can't get a clear answer from the city either on whether or not the city will require a second sound test once the work on the building is completed. Will they or will they not? Also, if the sound is still at a nuisance level, once the work is done, again, that is to say, if I'm out back listening to gunshots constantly, it's going to really put a damper on my life and my property value. Does the city intend on doing anything about it? Again, we've been trying to get the city to sit down and talk with us, our community, about the sound and other issues since pretty much September. But the city's been vague or refused to talk to us altogether. So we're asking the city council to make sure that this happens. We want our council people to make the city meet with us. Thank you guys for your time.
You. Pam? And then next is Vicki Ottoby.
Good evening, Council. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So an overall comment is that, interestingly, tonight you have a demonstration of why land use coexists. There are uses that are incompatible with each other. And in Western history, we have struggled with this for centuries. And our current land use practices are a product of that. So let me ask you to keep that in mind when you look at short-term rentals. When folks are nervous about the shooting range, there are many other uses that are incompatible, and that's why people are nervous about the short-term rentals. So let me go back to what I wanted to say. First, I agree with Carol Brezak. The language of 4E was deceptive. It included, on the ballot, it included declarative statements, not a question. I, as a voter, should be presented with a question that I can answer yes or no. When the city included declarative statements at the beginning and the end, including an assurance that is under separate law that there will be a public process, I think many people were misled. And if you look at the first A through D being declined, and then E being somewhat approved, I think that indicates deceptive language in that measure. I agree with Carol. There's a problem with our process. Please fix it. Second, the city I wanted to mention it's a sad day that the city is losing its fire assets. This should not go unremarked. I don't think we got our fair value for that. I think other cities that contracted with South Metro did. We got a bad bargain, and I don't think our interests were protected in this. Third, the city change process, the ethics and land use item at the end of this says that our city process is deliberated and we have data. And I'm going to say the study session was about short-term rentals was hand-waving, literally, and comments out of people's head. Imagine what it would have been like if staff had prepared for several neighborhoods in the city, taken certain houses or lots and said, what if we had short-term rental in this type of property, in this type of property, in this type of property, and in this type of property? Aberdeen Village, downtown, and different kinds of units, and the duplexes that are downtown. That would have made the discussion much more pertinent and useful, and that's what should have occurred. Now, I don't have time to talk about short-term rentals, but please fix the hotel and motel uses and the SPOA-city relationship. And fundamentally, short-term rentals are being portrayed proudly as businesses.
You need to wrap it up. Thank you.
They are not businesses. They are in residential areas. The reason for residential areas should be protected, and you don't allow business in residential areas.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks.
Vicki Ottoby? You don't look like Vicki.
No doubt.
Are you Doug Mass? Okay. Yeah, you signed up on the same line, so.
I am Doug Mass, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Vicki Ottoby is my wife.
Okay.
We have a short-term rental here.
I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Mass, M-A-S-S. Thank you. We have a short-term rental property here in the Littleton area. It's just we've been involved with the property for 10 years. We've had it as a short-term rental for 2. We personally meet each and every one of our guests as they come into the property and show them around, show them the peaceful area that we're in, and support the local businesses. In fact, we have a list of properties that are businesses, I should say, that we want to encourage our guests to go and enjoy, not the franchises that are nationwide. We have a list of things of what to do at the property as well as what not to do. Quiet times after 10 o'clock so that we don't disturb our neighbors. We've had nothing but positive feedback. The home is a mid-century modern. The home was built in 1954, and it's a vintage property. We don't even offer a television there. So it's a place to go and relax and, excuse me, to get back to nature, really. We don't offer the television, like I say. We do have the internet. We've had 2 film crews that have been in there and have used the property, one being the Colorado Film School. So we encourage that rules be in place for certain properties, and certainly irresponsible owners that shouldn't be involved. So we want to make sure that this council doesn't take a knee-jerk reaction to the property that was involved and has brought this forward. The property itself is, we love it personally, and it means a lot to us, and we only want the best for the neighborhood, for the home, and for the community itself. So, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. So that is all I have signed up for on public comment, and if there's anybody who would like to speak, you can come down. Frank Atwood.
Good evening, City Council. My name's Frank Atwood, and I'd like to thank City Council for putting out a great calendar. It keeps my life in order, and Maureen runs it very well. The reason I'm here is to invite individuals to a holiday potato potluck party that my wife and I are hosting this Friday evening, the December 7th from 6 to 8:30. We call it a potato party. People have accused me of providing the inexpensive potatoes, expecting others to bring expensive potluck meals and expensive liquors, but that doesn't happen. People on occasion have shown up with nothing, or others have shown up with Kentucky Fried Chicken. Others have shown up with Pizza Hut pizza. So you're all invited. Everyone, call me at 720-260-1493, and I'll give you additional details beyond the information that it's Friday, December 7th, a holiday party from 6 to 8:30. Again, my phone number is 720-260-1493, and I hope people will give me a call. Thank you very much, and happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment. City Manager, did you have any comments, any clarifications you wanted to make based on comment this evening? I know that you had some.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Just a couple of thoughts here, and specific to the short-term rentals. We're going to be updating the staff communication here for the second reading and put in a little bit more detail about implementation. And, you know, over the last several months through the study sessions, we've talked to you about hiring a very specific company who would come in and help us kind of manage all this. And Host Compliance is that company, and they're very well known in this industry for doing just that. And I just wanted to kind of briefly give you a kind of a summary of the kinds of things that we're going to be looking for this company to do. So in general terms, there's kind of 5 things: trend monitoring, address identification, compliance monitoring, tax collection support, and a 24/7 hotline. And so just, if you indulge me just a little bit, I want to kind of touch on some of these things here. So a monthly report on aggregate short-term rental activity and analysis, kind of up-to-date list of the jurisdiction activity of short-term rental listings, full address and contact information for all identifiable short-term rentals, ongoing monitoring of short-term rentals for zoning and permit compliance, proactive and systematic outreach to unpermitted and/or illegal short-term rental operations, monthly staff report on jurisdiction, zoning, and permit compliance, ongoing monitoring of the jurisdiction listing for tax compliance, proactive, systematic, and data-informed outreach to short-term rental operations regarding their tax remittance obligations, monthly staff reports on such, 24/7 staffed telephone and email hotline for neighbors to report non-emergency problems related to short-term rental properties, daily, weekly staff reports containing the numbers and types of reported incidents, list of properties for which incidents have been reported, custom reports and analysis on the hotline itself. So this is just kind of an overview of some of the detail that we'll be putting into the staff communication to talk about short-term rentals here when the council considers this in here in a couple of weeks. A couple of other comments, if I may, Mayor. There was considerable comment here on lots of issues kind of related, again, back to the Triple J. It's our understanding that a settlement agreement is imminent between SPOA and Triple J, and the outcome of that settlement, quite honestly, will allow the city to kind of comment on some of the questions that's been raised here for the last couple of months. Not just the city, but quite honestly, much of this is really, it needs to come from the association itself and the ultimate settlement between the two parties. And so we're hoping that that is truly imminent and that we are going to be able to respond to a lot of that. There are some other questions here about, you know, kind of safety, and I'll probably update the council when it's appropriate here on some of the activity that we have been noticing. Quite honestly, we've had additional patrols in the area. I realize at times it's hard to see that. I think we're trying to create a presence there, and so I'll probably report a little bit to council on that here in the near term. I certainly appreciate their interest in wanting to work with the police department for a neighborhood watch group of sorts. Very reasonable request, and I think certainly we want to accommodate that when the time is right. And I think that we're working, staff's working on a series of questions, much of which they presented here this evening. They've given it to us in writing. And so I've tried to put staff on point here so that we can put together responses in a timely manner to all that. And again, some of the litigation is going to limit us in what we're going to be able to kind of respond to in detail. I think there was some other interesting comments here on the short-term rentals, for which I think we'll, with the city attorney's office, we'll be kind of contacting some people to understand better kind of the impacts to the hotel motel piece of that specifically. The easement here at Jackass Hill, will certainly reach out to that particular individual and kind of work through that. Some comments here about kind of the election law. Personally, I'll just reach out here to that person here and kind of have a better understanding of kind of what the issue is, and we'll report back through the city attorney's office as well, kind of that issue. So that's kind of a general summary. We'll probably look at this in a little bit more detail and report to council.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Normally, we don't do a lot of addressing the public comment, but I got to say, I really think it's time that we create some sort of a better communication with the Triple J neighborhood, with the Highline. I understand the litigation, and I know that that has to be cleared up, but we continue to hear from that community the same comments, the same concerns, the same issues that we have already addressed. And so at some level, the communication is not connecting. And I think that it's a two-way street. Communication is never one way. So I would ask, and council, to have your support for this, that it's going to take a little bit of time on staff, that there is a reach out to someone, perhaps the person who's the chair of their HOA, to create a communication network into that group, that we know that information's getting disseminated, and that then we do create a consistent, whether it's a weekly or a bi-weekly meeting with staff that you select. If you would like one or two council members there, I think that it's fair to ask us or volunteers, and that they send representatives, and that the information then gets pushed out to both those groups, because, you know, they, God bless them, they come down here every single meeting and they say the same things. That's not fair. And it's not fair to us, and it's not fair to them. I'm not a victim here.
If I may,
we get
Mayor.
that, but I think that it's clear. I mean, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. It's not working. Let's do something different.
Yeah, if I may, Mayor, let me just comment on that. I think we all recognize kind of the status quo is not working to anybody's satisfaction. Unfortunately, the litigation does play into that. The city has had a fair amount of conversation with the board of SPOA to talk about exactly that very issue, is how do we coordinate kind of the response to these issues and communicate in a broader sense. You know, and if you kind of look at it from the perspective of SPOA, the board itself, you know, they represent obviously multiple members across the association, and they all have very differing opinions of kind of what's going on. So I think it's our challenge to kind of work with them and kind of coordinate a response, so they have the ability to share not just with, you know, the co-housing group here that, you know, voices a lot of good concern, but obviously their larger membership within the association. It is probably one of the largest and most complex associations that we have in our city. And so the challenge of that board itself is pretty significant. Unfortunately, this litigation has put them kind of in a very awkward place. So we do recognize that the status quo of communication right now is not working. We have commented on a lot of these things in writing, but somehow it's just not working. So again, we recognize that we got to do something different.
Okay, I would suggest that if possible, if there's some sort of recommendation, and we can discuss that perhaps at next week's study session. But give it about a 20-minute, do you have?
Again, a lot of it depends on the litigation and the board itself. And so will I be prepared in, say, a week? I'm not sure. but I think it's one of those that we all recognize something needs to be changed sooner rather than later. I'll try to give you an update in a week, but I can't promise you that we'll have a solution to that, in large part because of the coordination with SPOA, the board itself.
Okay. All right, moving on to consent agenda. So I need to read each of these for the record.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to actually get tired of my own voice.
We're happy about it, too.
Oh, geez, I'm sure. Okay. Item ID 18-422, motion to cancel City Council's regular meeting on January 1st, 2019. Ordinance 53, an ordinance on first reading amending Ordinance 23, Series 2017, known as the Annual Appropriations Bill, for all municipal purposes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2008 and ending December 31, 2008. Ordinance 54 is an ordinance on first reading amending Title 10 of the Municipal Code regarding short-term rentals. Ordinance 49 is an ordinance on first reading approving an agreement with TriTech Software Systems for the purchase and use of a police consolidated records management system. Resolution 78 is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and the City of Inglewood for pavement rehab on South Windermere Street between Littleton Boulevard and West Bellevue Avenue. Ordinance 50 is an ordinance on first reading to amend the Beaumar Estates Plan Development entitled the Beaumar Estates Development Plan, Lot 4, Block 1, Beaumar Estates Subdivision. Resolution 77 is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County concerning community service case management. Ordinance 52 is an ordinance on first reading amending Title II, Chapter 2, Section 1 of the City Code and adding Title II, Chapter 12 regarding the creation of the City of Littleton Transportation and Mobility Board. Ordinance 46 is an ordinance on first reading authorizing the conveyance of certain real property, Littleton Fire Rescue Station 12 to South Metro Fire Rescue Fire Protection District. Ordinance 47, an ordinance on first reading authorizing the conveyance of certain real property at Littleton Fire Rescue Station 16 to South Metro Fire Rescue Fire Protection District. Ordinance 48 is an ordinance on first reading authorizing the conveyance of certain real property at Littleton Fire Rescue Station 19 to South Metro Fire Rescue Fire Protection District. And Ordinance 45 is an ordinance on first reading revising Title I, Chapter 5 of the Municipal Code regarding Department of Fire, and amending and revising Title 5, Chapter 2 regarding International Fire Code adoption. ID 18395 is a motion to approve the asset conveyance authorization agreement between the City of Littleton, Littleton Fire Protection District, and Highlands Ranch Metro District, authorizing the city to convey the assets of Littleton Fire Rescue to South Metro Fire Rescue Fire Protection District. ID 18396 is a motion to approve an amendment to the Fire Protection and Emergency Services Agreement between the City of Littleton and Lockheed Martin Space Systems. Resolution 76, 2018 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a special warranty deed on behalf of the members of the Littleton Fire Rescue, the City of Littleton, Littleton Fire Protection District, and the Highlands Ranch Metro District, conveying stations 13, 14, 15, 17, and 18 to South Metro Fire Rescue Fire Protection District. ID 18406 is a motion to authorize the city manager to execute bills of sale for the personal property in Littleton Fire Rescue Stations 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 on behalf of the City of Littleton, Littleton Fire Protection District, and the Highlands Ranch Metropolitan District. Ordinance 51, 2018 is an ordinance on first reading authorizing the conveyance of the interest of Littleton Fire Rescue in certain real property located at the Littleton Fire Rescue Training Facility to South Metro Fire Rescue Fire Protection District.
Last one, come on, you can do it.
ID 18400 is approval of the November 6, 2018 regular meeting minutes. I need a motion.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Break? No break.
No breaks. Okay, on to, we have nothing under general business, but we do have a second reading. This is ordinance 43, 2018, an ordinance on second reading deleting Chapter 7 of Title 11, Capital Facility Impact Fee, and adding Chapter 14 of Title 1, Land Development Fees. And this will be presented by Tiffany Hooton, our Finance Director.
Good evening, Council. Included, I'm here. Nice job, Debbie, by the way.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Before you, you have an ordinance 43-2018 regarding impact fees, and I do have a presentation prepared. If you'd like me to go through that, I certainly can, or I can just kind of highlight the information.
Highlights.
Awesome.
Highlights.
Brief highlights. Couple brief highlights. We did discuss the impact fees with council during the budget session, and then we did have a first reading in November regarding the impact fees. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to amend the fire impact fees to 0, since we're no longer going to have a need for capital assets for the fire department, and then also increase the transportation impact fee based on some revised calculations that we did internally to include additional projects that we envision over the next 5 to 10 years. So essentially, those are the two changes that we're making. It's going to impact both residential and commercial properties that come forward in the city in the future. These were originally adopted in 2013 with an amendment in 2014. They haven't been revised since then, so it's been about 4 years. Please note that we will be bringing additional impact fee information to council in the future. We have a couple of phases that we're going to be doing to look at those. So just wanted to mention that. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Council, any questions? No questions?
No questions, but as we move through the vote, can you just cycle through the slides so if people are watching, they can see it just slowly?
Sure.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. I'll open the hearing at 8:05. And did anybody sign up to speak? Would anybody like to speak? Okay. No one signed up and no one wants to speak. I will close the public hearing at 8:05. Council, any additional questions of staff? Any comments? Okay, we need a motion, please.
I move to approve on second reading the ordinance deleting Chapter 7 of Title 11, Capital Facility Impact Fee, and adding Chapter 14 of Title 1, Land Development Fees.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are you ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our business reports. Councilmember Cole, do you have a report?
No report. We had lots of report already.
Councilmember Driscoll, do you have a report?
Just a couple quick things.
I'm sorry. Hold on a second. You skipped the.
Oh.
Who?
I'll
Who's
get
that?
you people.
Those people.
I'll get you.
Okay.
Mixing it up.
That's right, yeah.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, we had a great time at the Candlelight Walk. I wanted to thank mainly Elizabeth and Kelly, part of the staff, doing a great job. Got a lot of good compliments. Also want to remind people we have Littleton Merchants meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Anybody wants to attend, that's down at the little town hall. And then on the 12th, a reminder of the Littleton Business Chamber meeting at 6 o'clock. All's invited. It's sort of a holiday party. I will be presenting, sort of giving an update, not an update, but a review of what we've done this past year for City Council, in City Council.
Great. Councilmember Valdez.
Yes, just thank you to the Littleton Police for the brave work that they did regarding the fire a couple weeks ago. I also want to point out an article that was in a Littleton paper by the reporter David
Gilbert.
It's a real nice article, so if you get a chance, folks, get out there and take a look at that, where he mentions our fine police. Thank you.
Councilmember Schlechter.
I want to quickly commend Littleton Public Schools. I attended earlier, right before the meeting this afternoon, an hour of code for K through 8 students through Littleton Public Schools at Arapahoe High School, and I took my second grade son there, and it was great. They got to play with little robots doing coding thing. I think it was there were hundreds of kids.
Computer code.
Computer code.
Building code.
No, not building code, not zoning code. It's not.
These kids like that.
For computer science, and definitely not code. City code, no. So,
Councilmember Fay. No report. Okay. And I don't have a report, but I do want to thank immensely Love Inc., the American Red Cross, and the Arapahoe County Outreach Group. They are doing amazing work helping with the tragedy at the Windermere Apartments that has been declared uninhabitable. And so the residents, 163 residents, are working on how to move out and find new location. And these groups are doing an amazing amount of support and service for these folks. And so I would say that if there's anybody who would like to reach out and help support those groups, they would be very grateful for that. It's easier to share resources with those who can distribute those resources in a way that is fair and equitable among those that are in need. So again, that's Love Inc., American Red Cross, and the Arapahoe County Foundation. City Manager.
Mayor, if I just may add to that, and maybe what also council touched on is, you know, at some point in time, I would like to share with you a little more detail about what staff, both police and fire, went through here during the Southview apartment fire, and it's an amazing story. Just a terrible tragedy here to what these people went through, and certainly the loss of life. And so the impact to our residents and our community is just devastating. But it's also, I guess if there's a silver line to any of this, it's not only just our staff, but what the community has done to kind of support a lot of these people who are going through just a very, very difficult time. You mentioned Love Inc. and certainly the American Red Cross. And I've been working with the mayor and certainly council looking at an additional donation to each of those organizations of about $7,500. And so I've been processing that here now. In addition here, I've asked council at the mayor's suggestion here to look at an additional donation here of $5,000 here to the Arapahoe County Foundation, who is a nonprofit organization that reaches out here to our community and certainly throughout Arapahoe County for the public health and welfare here of our citizens. And specifically, they're looking at the transition now to more permanent housing, transportation, deposits. I mean, just all the difficult logistics that you can imagine here for these people that they're having to wrestle with. So again, I think I want to certainly congratulate not only our staff, but quite honestly, this community. It's just amazing what we've been able to do to try to help these people here in a very difficult time. But thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Mayor, Council, there's a report attached to your agenda. There's one thing I want to know tonight. There were some comments about the ballot language. I want to assure Council, in that ballot language, first it underwent a very comprehensive legal review as to its neutrality. Then we had a number of individuals look at that ballot language just, again, in the interest of making sure it's fair and it met the statutory requirements. And I would tell you that ballot language did meet the statutory requirements. It was fair, it was neutral, and it certainly complied with Colorado law.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.